You want to give them another minute?
Grab my coffee. I'm right here. Grab my coffee.
Yeah, that wasn't an issue.
Okay, let's go ahead and go because we have Ed. Ed.
We are ready to live.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Text me when we're live. Hi, my name is Gil Robertson, President of the African American Film Critics Association, and today we welcome you to Financial Fluency. As the TV and film industry experiences unprecedented challenges due to the shutdown caused by COVID-19, AAFCA has assembled a panel of financial experts who will answer questions from representatives at key guilds in the industry. Our panelists include Stephanie Elaine, National Board Member with the PGA, Jeff Bird from the Directors Guild, the African American Steering Committee Co-Chair, Michelle Amore from the Committee of Black Writers at the Writers Guild of America, and Courtney B. Vance, President of the SAG-AFCA Foundation. Our experts are Ted Reed from Morgan Stanley, Sports and Entertainment Wealth, Rick Berrigan from JP Morgan Chase, and Terry Williams, owner, COO of One United Bank, the largest African American bank in the country. Welcome, everyone.
Hey.
Hi.
Okay.
I was on mute, sorry.
We're going to open it up to our reps from the various guilds to ask the three of you questions about how we navigate the time that we're in right now. And if time permits, we'll also turn over to our audience for some additional questions.
Great.
All right. Good. Stephanie?
Sure.
Stephanie?
Okay. So I have I'm representing the Producers Guild. And as you know, as producers, as a lot of artists, we don't get paid unless we're actually shooting. And we often have to keep money in between gigs so we can live. So looking at the facts on the lay of the land right now, it feels very uncertain when we're going to be able to get back to work. And so my question is, if we have savings, if we have a little savings, what can we do with that money now to stretch it? Like, what kind of instruments should we put it in? Should we keep it in cash? Should we invest in something? What do you think is the best way to secure money, but also stretch it?
You want to go Rick first, or how we want to do?
Is that anybody in particular?
Anyway.
Whoever has an answer.
Okay. No, all right. I'll go. Stephanie, thank you. And again, thank you to everybody for allowing us to be here. These are, of course, extremely difficult times. We're also dealing with a lot of things socially, politically, and economically. So appreciate everybody tuning in and having us here. So pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
I would say to answer your question, Stephanie, it's what we tell people and what I've had conversations with is this is a great time to really start thinking about your overall plans and your overall objectives, because just like you said, it's always important to keep some liquidity on hand, depending on what your plans and objectives are. So we kind of look at it as buckets, what's in your short-term bucket, what's in your medium-term bucket, what's in your long-term bucket. And right now is a great time for people to really focus on what are the liquidity needs that they need today. And especially with producers, just like you said, like you don't know necessarily when the next, influx is actually coming, right? So it does make sense to have some liquidity on hand. It also makes sense that you're not, tying it up in sort of long-term investments, but instead think about the shorter term, what you can do, and then also access to liquidity is key. We've been dealing with a lot of folks in making sure that they have access to lines of credit, because credit is always critical and key, and making sure that you've got access to it at all times, but especially during these times of crises is paramount. And so a lot of people are establishing access to credit now so that they can fund their either immediate liquidity needs or their medium-term liquidity needs. That's what we've been saying.
Great, thank you.
This is Courtney. Yeah, sorry I'm late.
Hey, Courtney.
How you doing, Courtney?
Very well, thank you.
Michelle, if you had a question, I was going to go into.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to know is what should we be looking for when we're hiring a financial planner? Yeah, what should we be looking for?
I'll take that. So there's a couple of things that you should consider. First of all, are they working? What type of firm are they working for? Do they have a name behind them? The first resource that I always refer people to, and I think it's the most important if you get nothing out of this, there is a website, finra.org, FINRA.org. And if you go on that website, you can click off to the right, you'll see a section that says broker check. That will tell you basically anything you want to know about that financial advisor that's important. Number one, what firms have they worked with? What firms have they worked at? Have they jumped around in the past to a number of different firms over a period of time? How long have they been licensed? What licenses they hold? But it will also tell you if there's ever been any complaints, or settlements against that person. So it's kind of almost like your credit report in a sense. That it's a background report, and that's typically the first resource that I tell people to go to. The other thing is you want to look at what is their product offering, and many times their licenses will determine that. Are they able to offer you all types of investments? Do they have a general license, or are they only able to offer you mutual funds, or only able to sell insurance products? So be careful of biased advice when it comes to that. I would look at what their educational background is. Do they also participate in areas of continuing education? Do they go back to school to learn more? Are they doing is their firm requiring them to do additional continuing education? Some things that I would also be cautious of, especially in this COVID era that we're in right now. Whenever there's crisis, there's scams develop. These type of times tend to bring out the worst in people. When it brings out the best, but it also brings out the worst in people. And many times you'll hear of many different types of investment ideas and investment vehicles to get into to make quick money. There's no such thing as quick money. So when you hear that, run. Everything in our business comes down to risk. And there's an old saying, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. So when you start hearing people, I had a pitch somebody came to me about yesterday where you could double your money in 6 months and it's 100% guaranteed. There's only one thing guaranteed, which is a US Treasury bill. And right now that's paying less than 0.5%. So if you hear that, be very, very cautious. The other thing that I will caution you, I see this particularly in the entertainment industry, is many people, and the sports industry, is many people will make a decision of hiring a financial advisor because they've heard that they work with other people in the industry. That just makes them a good salesperson. It does not make them a good financial advisor. So be very cautious. There's nothing wrong with having a referral, but check. Do your due diligence. Go on Google and see what other kinds of things you can find out about that person. But that's I don't want to go too long, but I can give you a number of other things if you reach out.
Okay, I do have another question, but this one, I believe it might be for Terry. So I sold my first show last year to CBS, and I want to start my own company. I'm tired of waiting on the industry to do anything for me. And my question is, how do I set up a company that I can take advantage of loan programs?
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. I guess I'm the sole banker on this. And just to be clear, I'm not a financial advisor. I will leave that to the experts. But I will tell you from a banking perspective what is important. and this is particularly important at this time. There is this great program, this Paycheck Protection Program that is available to businesses. And what we're finding is that a lot of businesses in our community, when I mean the Black community, they don't have all their documentation or their ducks in a row, which makes it very difficult for them to qualify for the program. And so it's good if you're thinking about starting a business to really think about the structure of that business, to work with an attorney. A lot of us create these very complicated structures for very simple businesses. So the idea is to try to simplify the business structure. So whether it's a sole proprietor or LLC, you don't have to be an S corporation, as an example, if you don't have any employees. So think about the business structure, talk to an attorney about that, and then also have a very good accountant. Tax is important, paying your taxes, ensuring that your tax documentation supports what you're saying your business is, because those are the types of things that a bank is going to require in order to qualify you for a loan.
I'm just going to jump in just to piggyback on that. This is Courtney. My name is Courtney B. Vance. When my wife and I were starting out, our agents and managers told us we didn't need an attorney. And it took us 20 years to break away from that. So I say all that to say, just because someone, quote unquote, is a working actor and doing very well doesn't necessarily mean they have good people around them. And we didn't know until we got married, how is it that we're going to plan for the future? And our business manager and our financial advisor told us that the first person who gets a job, that money of substantial job, that money is the money for the year. We live off that money. Everything else that comes in goes to investments and to your future. And so we began to start to realize, wow, we can actually plan for our future. Just because we're freelancing doesn't mean that we can't be like 9-to-5ers and plan for our future. And again, and I agree with you, Ted, that whole idea of risk is, we had to sit down with our financial planner and say, and he asked us, he said, what can you sleep at night with? What amount of risk can you go to bed knowing that if the market is going through the roof, you're not going to participate in that? Or if it's going through the floor, you're not going to participate in that. So you have to figure out what that is, and then structure your portfolio appropriately, so that you can sleep at night, and you may not, your money may not double in 2 years, but it may double in 8 years, and that's fine. So that's, that whole idea of, as Mr. Ted said, figuring out a way to surround yourself with the people who can give you good advice. And you got to do it before you blow up. When you blow up, everybody's coming at you. So start to find those great people through, as was mentioned, word of mouth, and then checking them out, as Mr. Ted said. But we found it late in life. We didn't all of a sudden. We were actually discouraged from finding those great attorneys and business managers. We were delivered. We were literally delivered, and that it's a terrible thing, that to take advantage of people and their money. So,
I have a quick question. Once again, I'm sorry, this is Jeff Bird from the DGA, African American Steering Committee. And, as a filmmaker and as a TV maker, obviously we, especially as directors, we think with our brains in regards to visually. And obviously we can be influenced a lot by, the movies and TV shows that we see. So, in times like these, a lot of, panic may set in with films that we've seen before in regards to our bank's going to go under, or, we're going to lose all our money, or the ones and zeros are digitally going to just disappear from people's bank accounts. So, my question to the three of you is, in this time of change and upheaval on every level, health and, socially and racially, I mean, are there any dangers of financial institutions, losing our money? Should we throw them in our mattresses or whatever? What's and Terry, this is especially for you being the banker here, but also for the investment side, because hey, my 401k took a hit. I mean, the stock markets are volatile right now as well. So I'm just curious, as a creator, and we really think about that a lot. And I'm a lot like Stephanie, what she said in the beginning. I never really I keep my head creative, so I never really put my head into my financial business until I had to, much like what Courtney said, I had to be delivered over there in some way. And it was a friend, and it was, references. And now I have a financial manager and a business manager for the last 15 years that has literally saved my life on many times. So, but are there any worries of the stock markets and also the banks, Terry, just kind of packing up and closing doors?
So I'll start with that. And just again, so everyone knows, I'm Terry Williams, president and owner of One United Bank. We're the largest Black-owned bank in the country. We are FDIC insured. So your money is completely guaranteed up to $250,000. And there are also ways for you to put more money into a bank, pretty much as you want into a bank, because there are ways for us to guarantee it by distributing that money to other institutions. So, but let me also say, similar to, I think it was Ted that said that, it's risk reward. You put your money in a bank and it'll be there and it'll be safe. But the return in comparison to some other things that you could invest in is not going to be as high. And that's where these financial advisors come in. But if safety is your concern, and I would say this, safety should be everyone's concern, that there's a certain amount of your money that you want to be sort of risk-free, and there's a certain amount of liquidity that you need just to pay bills, and banking is a great place for that. I would also say that it's important that you have a relationship with a bank. This is another thing that a lot of our businesses are finding out. They thought they had a relationship with a bank, because they've been banking at a particular bank, typically these large banks for many years. And then when it came, this pandemic came, and they came in for that line of credit or for that, PPP loan. And then the bank's like, who are you? And a lot of Black businesses in the first round didn't get any money because the money went to the bank's larger customers. And that was a sort of a rude awakening for our community. So I would say that it's important to have a relationship, a real relationship with a bank, whether it's with One United, a Black bank, or any bank. It's important for them to know who you are and to feel like they're going to be there for you when you need them.
So Terry, I have a question. When you say have a relationship with the bank, what exactly does that mean? And how can people have a relationship with the bank in terms of, is a certain department, a certain person? What does that mean?
Does that mean also, because some people, their business offices have the relationship with the bank? So does that mean that as well, or is that different than the business management office that has the relationship and you don't?
Yeah. So I actually am going to ask all of our financial advisors to answer this. Sure. I can tell you, in banking and commercial banking, it means a relationship with an individual that can make a decision or influence a decision. So that would mean not, a teller, so to speak, but someone who you could present your case, your request, and actually help in getting that request fulfilled. One of the benefits of smaller banks is that individual, like such as myself, is actually reachable, and that you could have a relationship with. But in every bank, there, they could be loan officers, they could be private bankers, they could be, but there's someone that you feel knows you and that can advocate on your behalf. There's a lot in banking that is by the numbers, but there's also a lot that it really is what puts you at the front of the line. Again, I'm going to use this Paycheck Protection Program as an example. Large banks put their large customers and their relationships at the front of the line, and then the money was gone. Now in the second round, a lot of our businesses, Black businesses are getting funded and got funded in the second round. So that shows that they qualified, but they were not put at the front of the line. And that's, so what I mean is to have a relationship with someone who you believe can advocate for you and put you in the front of the line and try to get the decision made when you need it. And again, it varies by bank.
So I
Can I add to that?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I just wanted, before you answer, Rick, I just wanted to add to that. I'm getting real 101 here, which is, how do you find that person? Do you look at the staff of the bank? Is it a loan officer I should call? Is it like, how do you determine who that relationship is with?
Yeah, I mean, well, look, I got a whole variety of different thoughts here. But certainly we think it's imperative that you have a relationship with an individual, whether it's, a bank or a private bank or someone in the bank who can actually deliver, understand what you need, what your goals are, and can help deliver the firm to you. Because that's the benefit of literally having somebody that can help navigate some of the larger institutions where there's a lot on the platform and the platforms are robust and there's a lot that can be done, whether it's at the personal level or whether you do have businesses, right? And you have business interests, whether you have philanthropic interests, whether you want to talk about estates and trust planning, to understand who can actually help deliver those solutions to you. So I think that's definitely critical. How do you go about finding that person? Some of it's going to be word of mouth. Some of it's going to be literally on, info sessions just like this, and seeing people, then just following up. And then also understand, I want to come back to what was a point that was made earlier, is understanding, who does what and who's licensed to do what, right? Because it's so true. There are many people who will be out there that can tell you, you don't need to talk to anybody else. They will introduce you to everybody that you need to know. And that's not really how it works, because everybody is licensed to do different things, right? And, back to what Ted was saying earlier, when you look at who's licensed to do what, right? People are licensed to do investments. People are licensed, right, to do lending. But, if you're a business manager or an attorney, you're not licensed to do that. You're not licensed to give investment advice. You're licensed to sort of sign off on taxes and CPAs if you're a CPA. If you're an attorney, then of course you're very licensed to, sign off on and negotiate contracts, right? But when it comes to literally sort of, balance sheet management, looking at your whole balance sheet and your finances and your wealth strategies, there are people that are licensed to actually do just that. And so I think it's just critical that you find people who you can trust, people who have had track records, and people who, can help deliver the very solutions and products that are needed to best meet your goals.
Can I go back? I want to go back to Jeff's question. You guys approached it more from the banking standpoint, but I believe one of the things you were saying, Jeff, was in this kind of environment, is there a fear that I could lose all my money? Am I right in that? And so one of the things that I always point out, first of all, is, as I said, every type of investment vehicle, no matter what it is, comes down to risk. And what is your comfort level with risk? And risk can be defined a bunch of different ways. Risk can be, if I give you X amount of dollars, am I going to have the same amount of money back when I go to get it? Risk could be, am I going to be able to buy the same amount of goods with that money when I need it? Risk could be, I'm trying to send my kids to college, or I'm trying to, retire and need X amount of money when I retire. And am I going to have enough money available, which we would call inflation, or rather the risk of not being able to achieve our goal. So you have to define that first. The things that I look at is I started at my firm in 1986. And so from the time I've been at the firm until now, there have been 6 what I call end of the world events. 6 times where we thought we will never recover. It's never been like this before. This is the absolute worst. The reality is when you have to take a look at, is this money that you're putting away, is it long-term money? Is it money that you're going to need 6 months, a year, or is it money you're not going to need for 5 years or even 10 years or even 20 years? And so if you're putting money away that you're not going to need until you reach that retirement point or whenever that may be, then you have to think to yourself, am I going to stop putting gas in my car? Are we going to stop communicating with each other? Is the entertainment business, are people going to stop watching movies and listening to music and all of the things that actually produce revenues? So if you own so when you buy a stock, all you're doing is you're buying a piece of a company. You're buying a piece of a company so that at some point down the road, you can sell your portion of the company for more than what you originally paid for it. That's it. It's that simple. And so what you want to own is a collection of many different companies. And if you spread your risk out into, as you learned as a kid, don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you spread your risk out and have a diversified portfolio of stocks and bonds over the long run, all of those 6 periods that I've experienced in my career, so far we haven't completely recovered from where we are yet, but all of those, the market has recovered from there. There's no guarantee that will happen, but the idea that you will lose every penny that you put into it, that would mean every one of those companies would have to go out of business. The other quick thing that I want to point out with this issue, what we're currently going through versus what we went through the last time we had one of these events, which was in 2008. Today, this is an issue of liquidity. It's an issue of how am I going to pay my bills when I'm not working? And so there's been many things. You've had the monetary stimulus, you've had fiscal stimulus, which are these programs existing, which will, it's not the end all, but it absolutely will help to stimulate the system again. You go back to 2008, and that was an issue of solvency. That was an issue. The question that I don't hear people asking is what you asked, what you just said is, am I worried about my bank going under, which was the question in 2008. In 2008, we had people that were basically buying homes at 10 times more than what they could afford. And so people were buying homes at 10 times what they could afford. Corporations were over leveraged. Banks were over leveraged. Countries were over leveraged. This is a much different situation. So I'm not trying to predict what's going to happen in the future, but I think that over the long run, this will pass.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to add to that because I agree, first of all, and I think it does go to your point, Jeff. We, as an example, are growing. Like we're growing, leaps and bounds. And the reason is because banks are an essential business. There was this is a relatively new thing, this concept of essential businesses. I mean, and the advisors here can maybe share their light on it. But, prior to this pandemic, that line of essential versus, I don't even want to call it not essential. It's a non-essential because, but there's clearly this line of businesses that are needed in order for people to function. And whether they're grocery stores or pharmacies, banks are one of them. I think the other part, so no, in fact, banks are doing very well during this particular economic crisis. I think the other thing that is the reason that we're growing, and it is a change, is just how comfortable people have become with online services and mobility. I mean, this pandemic has basically taken that and, a phenomena that was going to happen over many, many years, even generations, and just really combined it into like a few months. So the number of transactions that were happening online went from like 10% to like 80% in a matter of months. And that is not just shaping banks, but it's also shaping businesses in general. And anytime there is a crisis, there are also opportunities. So no, from a banking perspective, there isn't a risk of banks going under, but there are some opportunities that, again, I think the financial advisors could help you find.
Yeah, I would, Jeff, let me just also add just one final thing to that, which is, you know, back in 2008 and 2009, what obviously came out of that were a couple things, right? One is you had a lot of consolidation that was in the industry. So that did happen. And the other thing that happened was you had a lot of legislation that was passed and there was a lot of banking reform. So the capital requirements that we all have now are much different than they were before. So that's helping. And number two is the leverage that Ted talked about earlier. The leverage in the system is far less than it was before because people are much more prudent with how they're actually doing things and conducting business, and same thing on our side. So to answer your question, do we think the banks and the financial institutions are in much better shape than they were before? Absolutely, especially for the ones that are remaining, because there was a lot of consolidation there before. So I hope that gives you a bit of comfort. Obviously, we can't predict out into the future, but at least right now, that's what it looks like.
Could I wanted to segue in case, but if you Stephanie, if you wanted to piggyback on something, you go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to know, since so much banking and financial information has gone online, are banks taking extraordinary measures to protect that money? Because yeah, I'm old school, you know what I mean? I use banking online, but still I'm like, hold up, somebody could come in anonymous, or all these crazy people out there. What's happening there? Because I feel like that could be the next crisis, you know, like some kind of internet situation.
Stephanie, that's a great question. And cybersecurity is critical, right? Because you're right, that is something that we do see a lot of people worrying about. So you're not only talking about the safety and soundness of a bank's particular balance sheet and their assets, but how safe are they from preventing cyber attacks, right? So look, JP Morgan is a big institution. Literally, we focus on this and we spend upwards near $1 billion a year on cybersecurity because it's critical, not only, right, for our own operations and what we do, but to protect what you have, right, with us. So that's been absolutely critical for us. We've actually helped a lot of clients and their companies with some seminars that we also do because we have some experts. Because one of the funny jokes about our institution is some people say that we're a tech company that actually looks like a financial services institution because we do spend a lot on tech. And so we pride ourselves on being at the forefront of that, but cyber is critical. We do advise people on, you know, how to make sure that their own, you know, homes, businesses, entities, institutions are also at the forefront of protecting themselves, because you're right. That is a serious threat that continues to loom and will always loom. So you have to spend money, you have to throw resources at it for sure.
Can I also say, though, there are strong regulations that protect you as a consumer. So if you were to find yourself in some identity theft situation, a bank has to immediately provide funds back to you, and the bank takes the hit. So I just want everyone to feel comfortable that it's not a risk that you have to assume as an individual. It is something that banks have to invest in, and we do, and all banks do. And I would also say that regulators make sure we do, because they actually do an IT cybersecurity examination of banks. So it's not something that you should be concerned about as an individual.
Thank you.
I mean, it's so, that's Stephanie, I think it's so critical. Because, you know, now that as was mentioned, that 80% of what we do now is online. It's when we look at the election of 2016, we look at Sony went through their cyber crisis. It is the one thing, if that went down, it's, you know, it's literally there's how do you recover from that when someone has all your stuff? So the amount of money that JP Morgan is spending, I would imagine is probably everyone should be doing that right about now, spending that kind of money for that kind of protection to put all of our minds at ease so we can, okay, let me do all my stuff online. I know it's safe. I know they took down the election of 2016, but they're not going to do that now that they've solved that.
Yeah, right.
But that's it's a very real and ongoing concern of it has to be for all of ours now, because everything is there now. We've arrived at that point.
Yeah,
But
sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I can tell you, I the same as Rick, our firm is probably spent equal the amount. It's one of the biggest topics we talk about on conference calls. Recently we hired the head of the NSA to actually run our cybersecurity. So it's a major issue that all the major firms are actually talking about.
Great.
Yeah,
and doing something about.
Gives me a little bit of comfort.
I'd like to jump in and ask a question.
Oh, can I throw? There's other things just real quick that many firms are doing now, even to be able to access your account, like voice recognition, what you call it? What is it? Dual authentication, and other things that many firms are putting into place. I know we have this already. Whether it's fingerprint or voice or whatever, but there's a number of things that many firms are putting into place to protect their clients.
Do you mind if before you ask your question, I jump in here, because I haven't asked you a question yet for the panel, and I've commented, but I haven't asked a question. Do you mind?
Oh no, go ahead.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Michelle. As the new president of SAG-AFTRA Foundation, since COVID-19, many of our actors, thank you so much. Many of our actors across the country are out. There's not many, most 95% are left with reduced or no income. And how are the financial institutions are going to plan on servicing our community during the storm? Is there a potential during this pandemic for artists to renegotiate their interest rates on their loans and credit cards? What's the most effective way for artists to clear their debt? Those kinds of fundamental questions.
Yeah, I think there are.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I think there are a variety of different programs out there, whether it's for forbearance, forgiveness, and I guess that's all done at an individual level anyway. So there are those types of programs there. What we've been doing is really reaching out, especially to Black communities and within the entertainment and media and sports space, to really help understand what is it that we can be doing. We have a program, I don't know if you've heard of it or familiar with it, called Advancing Black Pathways, which was launched last year, that focuses on what we're doing within our communities with respect to education, job skills, and careers, and also wealth management, financial literacy. So to your point, Courtney, what we're doing is having conversations constantly, whether it's currency conversations to talk about credit and what it means to actually establish good credit. We have some Shades of Wealth series that we do on the private banking side, which is focused on, again, what are the types of issues that are facing people right now during this crisis, so that we can talk about what are the solutions that are in place, some of which I mentioned earlier, which is access to capital. I mean, I think we mentioned it, Ted said it before, this is about liquidity right now, right? This is about access to liquidity and what it is that people need right now, and how to basically manage your own individual and family liquidity needs right now. And then we could say, look, it's important to know it now. It's also important to know it just in general, across the board, but particularly right now, during this time, it's critical for people to understand what it is, to manage that and manage to, the liquidity concerns that they have, especially on the immediate side, right? So in the shorter term, but been having those conversations and outreaches because it's critical and it's important.
Thank you.
So we started advising people back in February to really really focus on this in a proactive way. And I'm just going to give you some of the advice that we gave, some of it that still holds. And some of it's going to seem basic, but it's just amazing how many people I talk to that were doing the opposite of what I'm about to say. So one thing I said is that if you have a job, keep your job. Now, I know that may sound basic, you know, but I can't tell you how many people I spoke to that said that they were going to change jobs, like in February, in March, in April, heck, just last week. I'm just like, if you have a job, keep your job.
Right.
And I'm going to get to those that don't have a job, but for those that do, you know, because this is where we tend to make a mistake. We are always the last hired, first fired. You know, so if you have some seniority, if you have a job, keep your job, you know, unless it, you know, impacts your mental or physical well-being, keep your job. So I always have to start there. The second is if you don't have a job, if, you know, and especially in the creative industry right now, you know, if you don't have a job, there are a lot of resources that the government has put into place to help during this time, that you should not have any shame about taking advantage of those resources. You know, a lot of people let their ego and shame get in the way of saying, hey, I need help.
I need help.
Nobody,
Right.
we did not create this. This is not something that we did, you know, to ourselves. It's not because of a bad decision that we made. This is a freaking pandemic, you know. And a lot of us who, you know, have either never been unemployed or have been working consistently for years, all of a sudden look up and it happened so quickly you couldn't have even planned. You couldn't have said like, well, next year this time this is gonna happen, so I need to save up some money. It happened like in a week. You know, we turned around and it was like, boom, 6 million people filed for unemployment. So have no shame, and look for all the things that the government has put in place to help get through this. And that's unemployment, you know, that is this Paycheck Protection Program. A lot of, you know, people that are independent contractors that, you know, are sole proprietors. I mean, you don't have to have like this business with a bunch of employees, qualify for a Paycheck Protection Program, which will pay you, you know, 2.5 months of what you had been earning. 2.5 months is a lot of money. I mean, there are a lot of people that don't even need the money. I'm saying, take the money. You know what I mean? It's 2.5 months of what you have been, you know, what you've been earning.
Is it, can you apply now? Is it too late?
Yes, it is not too late. You can apply now. And they've actually extended the time where I don't know if that bill, somebody may know if that bill is finally passed, but they're extending the time. It was that you had to get the money and spend it in 8 weeks. They're now extending it to 24 weeks. So it gives you more time, because if you use it the way that the program allows you to use it, that loan becomes a grant. Like, so I'm just like, okay, now it's a limit on the amount because it only could go to 100,000, which, you know, a lot of you big wigs, that's not a lot of money, but for most people, that's a lot of money, you know? So I'm saying, take advantage of the programs that, you know, the government has put out there and have no shame. And then the third thing.
Do you have to be an S Corp to do that?
No, you can be a sole proprietor, you can be an independent contractor, you can be an S Corp, a C Corp. No, you don't have to be. And so, and then the third thing is, it really goes back to the question you were asking, Courtney, is to contact your creditors and negotiate. Like they cannot, we as bankers know that we cannot draw water out of a stone. Like if you don't have any more income, you know, we have to work with you. Right. And, you know,
don't hide. Just
right. Don't hide. And it's very painful. I know, because it's just like, you don't want to talk to us, and you know that, you know, we're going to give you a hard time. We are going to give you a hard time, but push and negotiate with your creditors, because it's not just you, it's everybody. And there are tremendous forbearance programs. There are all kinds of ways of which, and you have to also prioritize. You know, there's some bills you just can't pay. Right. I mean, that's the reality, you know, and you have to decide there's certain things that are important. I got to keep a roof over my head. I have to have food. I have to take, you know, certain things are important, other things you're just going to have to let go. But I think it's just to recognize that this is a pandemic, this is a crisis that we did not create, but we have to get through, and to just have no shame about how you're going to get through it.
Great info. Thank you.
Another quick question. Oh, Michelle, sorry, Michelle.
So when we started this off, we talked about how artists, a lot of times we don't really think about the financial side. We get that. But I was talking to a friend of mine who is actually a retired professor from Harvard, and he said, but isn't every artist an entrepreneur, which makes you a business owner? And he said, we really need to have some fundamentals. So as we're, getting ready to wrap this up, what can you tell us that we should know? Like, what are the fundamentals? Because there was a lot of information covered today. And, I'm the co-chair for the Committee of Black Writers. And I just want to make sure that a message is clear. What should we know? And what do we, it's like, we need to stop thinking that we don't know business or we can't know. So if you could, each of you can give us like one main piece of advice that we should know, and we can stop saying, oh, I don't need to know that because I'm an artist. It's like, no, you can't afford. It's like when Courtney mentioned, for 20 years, they were told not to have a lawyer, for example. I mean, but what do we, like, where do we go from here?
Right.
Great question.
Start with. Go ahead, Rick.
No, 100%, Michelle. I mean, so first of all, I agree. You need to know a lot, you know what I mean? And you need to want to know. I know that it's kind of, I guess people feel like, because it's prominent in the industry and maybe it's a sign of status, if you've got, a whole army of folks around you that handle stuff for you, then that means you've arrived or something like that, right? And I totally get that. But the more you're removed from your own finances, then the more dangerous it can be, because you're not keeping tabs on what's actually going on. So I would certainly encourage everybody to stay on top of what their own finances are. You want to know, because at the end of the day, it's your plan. These are your goals. These are your objectives. And by the way, they're going to fluctuate too, right? So it's not as if, you set it out today and then, all of a sudden you can't modify it. Of course you can modify it, but you need to be involved in that. And I would just encourage people to be more involved in that and any kind of modifications, rather than, sort of outsourcing that to other folks. Now, again, other folks are more licensed to do things, like I said, file your taxes, but nobody's licensed to know more about your own money than you. I mean, you need to know, right? And so you should certainly want to do that. I would say one final thing is on the business side, and I'm sure this could be, a can of worms or something that you've all been thinking about, is the intellectual property piece, right? Who owns it? Who has it? And where does it reside? And then structurally, what can be done with it? Because to the extent that there are ways to actually monetize it, then it's like, okay, who has control over that, and who can actually monetize it at a future point in time?
I would say a couple of things. Number one, have a budget.
Okay.
Sit down now. This is one of the best times right now while you're sitting at home. Look at where you're spending money, what you're spending money on. I can probably assure you that all of you sitting at home have spent less money in the last 2.5 months than most of the time. So those habits of realizing I don't need to spend all of this money, that some of this money needs to be put away. Keep those habits that you've started to develop while you've been home. One of the things we say in our business is you should always pay yourself first. And so regardless of what you do for a living, I typically advise that you should put at least 10% of your income into some sort of investment vehicle, a diversified investment vehicle first. Now, for an actor or a writer or a producer, or even with the athletes, because that cash flow and that income is not guaranteed and you don't know how consistent it's going to be, I suggest that you put away more than 10%, because you're going to have those down times like you do, like what's going on right now. So prepare for that, but constantly get in the habit. If that sounds like too much, start small. Start at 2%. And what you do is you gradually, each quarter or each month or each quarter, increase that amount. Believe me, you won't miss it over time. Okay. And like I said, this is a perfect example of what we're dealing with right now, where I'm sure people are spending less money now. The second thing is have a plan. Sit down with an advisor and create a financial plan. What is your goal? How much money are you living off of now, and how much money are you going to need to live off of when you decide that you no longer want to work any longer? And then find a financial advisor who's willing to actually educate you. A person who's willing to educate you on how investments work. Not just putting money sitting in the bank, sitting there earning very little, but how each investment vehicle works. So make sure that, going back to the original question that you asked me earlier about how do you find a financial advisor, make sure that they can talk to you about several different asset classes, not just one, and can explain it in very, very plain English. If you can't explain it, if they can't explain it in plain English, it's because they don't know it. And so that would be my main advice. And the last thing I would say, have the right team around you. You should absolutely have a good financial advisor. You should have a good CPA and a good lawyer, and they should be talking to each other.
Okay.
Many times, you know, I've worked with players and artists and actors before, and I've said, hey, let's get everybody together in one room, or nowadays it's a Zoom call, but let's have a conversation about your goals and review those goals regularly.
Thank you. That's excellent. Because I wanted to, last thing I'll say is that we're in a unique situation because writers are working right now. Right. We're the group that we are working. And so we'd love to have you come. We need to talk after this because I'd love to have you come because we are in that situation, which is different than everyone else right now. So, yep.
Real quick, last question for me. A couple things. Ted, you picked on, you mentioned something that really caught my eye. And going from, you know, also what Courtney said in regards to, you know, having sometimes as directors, you know, yeah, we're not working right now, but our shows are still airing. So we do get our residual income that comes in. And, you know, much like Courtney said, a lot of times, you know, when I got my business manager, I was taught, okay, you live off of that money, but then your residual money we'll take and we'll invest that. Are there any, you know, companies or any, you know, companies you think right now, or not even specific companies, but areas of business that we should think about investing our money into, and the ones we should stay away from? And any other educational resources that you guys recommend, you all three recommend, that we should do our homework on, or I should bring to my DGA members to do homework on after this?
Unfortunately, that probably has to be an offline question because I can't give specific investment advice on a public forum.
I thought I'd sneak that in there.
But I'd be glad to absolutely answer that question for you, or anybody else who's listening to this call. I guess they can contact. He's looking at me like, don't put
We're gonna give your social out. We're gonna ask for your socials, Ted. So by all means, feel free to share.
Absolutely, absolutely. I can. I'm on Instagram at OTREID3. Ted Reed at TEDREID3 on Twitter, and I'm also on LinkedIn. Just because of our compliance, I cannot take DMs on the Twitter though.
I was trying to get that free information. I was trying to get that freebie.
All you gotta do is call me. I got you, Jeff.
Well, this has been a great education on behalf of the African American Film Critics Association and our partner, SAG Indy. Thank you, Darian. We thank you. We thank you, industry reps, Stephanie, Jeff, Michelle, and Mr. Vance for your time and for educating our people in this industry about how they can, you know, be safe, be sound, you know, during this critical period. To Rick, Ted, Terry, thank you. This was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. We appreciate you. We've got a ton of questions that have come in that we will share. As we close, I'm gonna ask everyone to, if you'd like, share your social handles, which is an easy, sort of unintrusive way of people connecting. And they can get in touch with you that way. You can also reach out to us at AAFCA. On Instagram, we're at AAFCA. And on Twitter, we're at THE AAFCA. and we'll certainly funnel the questions to these wonderful people. So who wants to give out their socials?
Okay. I'll give it out quickly. It's just really just email Ricardo, RICARDO .Barragan, BARRAGAN @jpmorgan.com. It's pretty simple.
And ours is for Facebook, it's One United Bank. For Instagram and Twitter, it's One United are our handles. And you can DM and say you want to speak with Terry Williams, or just, put in your questions and it'll get to me. So really appreciate having this opportunity.
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. Anyone else? Final words, final thoughts?
Thank you, Gil, for bringing this all together.
Thank you, Gil.
Thank you.
I learned a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And everyone, subscribe to the AAFCA channel. We have AAFCA TV Honors coming up in August, and we have a lot of wonderful programming, virtual roundtables that we present throughout the week. Our next one is with Spike Lee, Delroy Lindo, and Jonathan Major. And next week we have Sally Richardson and the cast of Greenleaf. So make sure you sign up and make sure you stay notified about what we're doing. But thanks a lot, guys. This really means a lot.
And my social, this is Courtney. Hold on. My social is at Courtney B. Vance. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I'm at Stephanie Elaine on Twitter and IG.
Bert Jeff at Instagram, just BYRDJFF.
I know it says Michelle Gilly because you all see my legal name, my government name.
So now we know.
Right. I'm at Michelle Amore, AMOR, like the Stevie Wonder song.
Since we're talking about government names, I guess I got to mention my real name because if you look for me on Instagram, you might, not Instagram, LinkedIn, you might not find me. It's Octavius Reed. That's OCTAVIUS. The email is octavius.reid.iii@morganstanley.com.
Octavius, Ted. I love it.
Yes. Hi, all. I just want to say on behalf of the audience, because I've been quite fortunate to be an audience member, want to thank all of you and want to thank Gil. Gil, thank you for pivoting and having AAFCA be able to deliver such important content at this time. You have always been a leader in this industry and giving us not only what we want, but what we need. So thank you so much for this outstanding conversation. And as an audience member, I'm speaking for all of the audience.
And thank you, Deborah Langford. And also thank you, Sandra Richards. Thank you, Deborah Langford from JP Morgan Chase. Thank you, Sandra Richards from Morgan Stanley Sports and Entertainment Wealth. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.